Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. The 40th year of my marriage to Daniel Carter, I suddenly passed away due to overwork. For 40 years, I took care of my paralyzed mother-in-law, who had been bedridden for 35 years, and raised my son to adulthood. Before I died, my only wish was to be buried beside my parents. But the next day, my body was donated without my consent to the research institute, where Daniel Carter's first love worked. Two people in their 50s stood in front of my shriveled naked corpse, embracing each other affectionately. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have wasted so many years apart. But at least he raised our child in my absence, and now he's offering you my body for research. I suppose in some twisted way that makes up for a fraction of his mistakes, but the youth we lost, we will never get it back. Their so-called youth was my pain, my suffering, my entire life sacrificed for them. The agony pierced through me. Then suddenly I opened my eyes. It was the day when no one had yet come to claim me. A young Daniel Carter stood before me, his expression cold and distant. "As you wished," he said. "You brought a dowry, paid for my education, and took care of my mother. If I marry you, we're even." I was stunned. This was the day of our engagement. I had returned to the past. I could still hear the voices of the villagers around me. "Emma, once you marry into their family, you must take good care of your mother-in-law and look after Daniel. He's the only high school graduate in our town. One day, he'll be our only college graduate too." Someone took my hand and placed it in his. "Emma Johnson, you carry great responsibility now," they said. No one looked happy. The resistance in Daniel's grip was undeniable. But hadn't I died? I looked around in horror. The glass window reflected a young girl's face, mine. I was 19 again. His voice was indifferent. "You're uneducated. We're not on the same level. We have nothing in common. By all rights, we shouldn't even be together. The only reason I'm letting you into my house is that you seem obedient enough. I'll be attending classes in the city most of the time after we're married. Your only job is to take care of my mother. My mother's ration tickets are all given to me. You'll have to prioritize feeding her first." The past and present overlapped, his face merging with the one I had seen in my previous life. A sharp pain rang in my ears. I yanked my hand away as if I had been electrocuted. "Who wants to marry you?" I snapped. The sudden movement startled everyone. One of the villagers laughed. "Oh, the bride is shy." The entire courtyard erupted into laughter. They teased me, reminding me that I had spent so much time at the Carter house, and now that the wedding was happening, I was acting embarrassed. This is the new era, free love. No one's judging you. You're lucky, Emma. He's the most educated man in town. In my previous life, I had once fallen into a river and nearly drowned. Daniel Carter saved me. Out of gratitude, I did everything to repay him. I sent his mother expensive pastries I couldn't bear to eat myself. I used my fabric rations to make him new clothes while I wore patched-up rough linen. His mother saw that I was hardworking, had a good temper, and even came with a dowry, so she arranged our marriage. "You're a good girl." "Why?" "Daniel caught a cold and had a fever saving you. He even missed several days of school. Besides, everyone knows he brought you back with mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. If you don't marry him, no one else will take you. You're just a girl staying unmarried at home. Your parents wouldn't rest in peace knowing that." Before I even understood what marriage truly meant, I was tricked into becoming part of the Carter family. For 40 years I worked like an ox, like a horse, and in return I was discarded. But now that fate had given me a second chance, I would never make the same mistake again. "My mother told me to pack up and move in with you today." I heard myself say, "I still have school. I don't have time for a wedding banquet." Just like in my previous life, Daniel had no patience. He turned to the villagers. "Help move her dowry," he ordered. When my parents were alive, they worked hard and left me a decent inheritance. Later, my dowry helped Daniel Carter, who had come from poverty, finish high school and go to college. After graduation, he smoothly entered a government agency and climbed the ranks. The villagers bustled about happily, moving my things. In my past life, I had entered the Carter household just like this, confused and unaware. There was no wedding ceremony, not even a red character for happiness on the door. I had thought Daniel Carter was just an unromantic man, But 2 months after my death, he held a grand wedding with great fanfare. He married Sarah Miller. He personally designed and signed the ceremony, and he even cried at the altar more than once. Marriage in the past was just about getting by. It didn't matter who you were with. Life was tasteless either way. Until today, when I married Sarah, I finally understood what it meant to find happiness, even if it came too late. I will never let anything get in the way of my happiness again. As I watched everyone start to move my things, I quickly spoke up. Stop. Put everything down. The crowd turned to look at me in confusion, and Daniel Carter was clearly irritated. Enough, Emma, he snapped. Isn't this what you wanted? To have everything carried out one by one so the whole town could see just how much dowry you have? We're all working class people. You're just living off your parents' hard-earned money. What's there to show off about? Do you think I married you because of your dowry? Let me tell you, if it weren't for you and my mother constantly pestering me, I would never have married someone as ignorant as you. His brand new military green trousers, which he wore with such arrogance, had been sewn together by my own hands. In my past life, I had spent an entire night stitching them under the dim light of an oil lamp, and now, just like before, he used what was mine while belittling me. But if there was one thing different in this life, was that I had 40 more years of experience. I had been deceived, humiliated, and treated like a fool for an entire lifetime. I was no longer the timid, voiceless girl I used to be. Looking at Daniel's proud posture, I lifted my chin and crossed my arms over my chest. Well, if you're not marrying me, then I'm not marrying you either. The moment the words left my mouth, the entire crowd froze in shock. After all, in my past life, I had been the one constantly running to the Carter household, thanks to Daniel's mother adding fuel to the fire. The entire town believed I had shamelessly clung to him. Other girls my age had suitors lining up at their doors, while no one ever came for me because I was already spoken for. Now, I reached out and firmly pressed down on the chair that had been lifted for me. Clearing my throat, I addressed Daniel with a steady voice. Daniel Carter, I used to visit your home to help out because I was grateful to you for saving my life. Later, your mother said your family was too poor to afford your school fees and asked me to bring my dowry to support you. I agreed out of gratitude, but now, since you think I'm beneath you and you don't care for my dowry, that's just fine. I won't cling to someone above my station. From now on, we'll go our separate ways. You take your path and I'll take mine. We won't interfere in each other's lives. My voice was crisp and clear, ringing through the courtyard. Ignoring Daniel's darkening expression, I clasped my hands together and addressed the villagers. My apologies, everyone. You all went through the trouble of helping today, but it looks like it was for nothing. I can't let you go home empty-handed. I'll head to the market now, buy some meat and vegetables, and we'll have a feast tonight. Let's just treat it as a celebration for my new beginning. I let my gaze sweep across the crowd, my voice deliberately emphasizing a few words. If there are any hardworking, independent men who don't rely on others for support, please, ladies, keep them in mind for me. As I said this, I shot a glare at Daniel. In my past life, I had been beaten down, my confidence shattered by his constant belittling. But not this time. This time I would pull myself out of the mud. For the rest of my life, Daniel Carter would never have the chance to put me down again. The crowd was still waiting for his reaction, but I had already driven him out the door. What I didn't expect was that Daniel suddenly exploded with rage. Emma Johnson, what kind of game are you playing? There's no way you don't want to marry me. I sneered. Do you think you're some kind of prize? Look at yourself. You're as scrawny as a plucked chicken right now. Daniel hadn't yet climbed to a high-ranking position. He was nothing but a weak scholar relying entirely on others to support him. Laughter rippled through the crowd, and his face turned red with embarrassment. Emma Johnson, stop pretending to be high and mighty. You sacrificed so much for me. His words were suddenly cut off, but my heart had already skipped a beat. In my past life, Daniel had developed kidney disease. At the time, organ transplant technology was still in its infancy, but my kidney was a perfect match. Without hesitation, I had donated one of my kidneys to him. After the surgery, I stayed by his bedside, taking care of him night and day, despite my own deteriorating health. Because of that, I developed chronic illnesses, constantly exhausted and frail. But how did he know about it now? My eyes narrowed as I stared at him. A bold thought crossed my mind. Daniel had been reborn just like me. My hands clenched into fists. He had returned to this life and was still trying to drag me into the same hell as before. What did you just say? I lifted my chin, pretending not to hear. I didn't quite catch that. Are you trying to take back your words and propose to me again? Daniel's gaze flickered, but he quickly regained his composure, a mocking sneer forming on his lips. So that's the game you're playing now, trying to act hard to get. You just don't want people to think you're desperate to marry me. Oh, so you're trying to provoke me now? Daniel scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. Emma Johnson, let me tell you this. I will never bow down to you. If you really want to marry me, you better give in now. Otherwise, once I walk out that door, even if you get down on your knees and beg, I won't take you back. Before he could finish, I swung the broom in my hands and swept him straight out of the courtyard. Filthy thing, bad luck? I muttered as I dusted off my hands. Daniel clenched his teeth, his face dark with fury. All right, Emma, this is your choice. Just wait. One day when I rise to power, you'll regret this so much you won't even know where to cry. That evening, I held a banquet at home, treating the villagers to a proper meal. My parents had passed away early, leaving me without siblings. Over the years, it was the townspeople who had helped me with all sorts of things, so this was my way of showing gratitude. During the feast, some of the women I grew up with tried to persuade me. Emma, I know Daniel's temper is a bit nasty, but he's one of the few men around here with real potential. If he does make it to college, his future will be bright. You shouldn't make a decision in the heat of the moment. You've already made a scene, vented your anger. Why not let us go with you to apologize to his mother? I heard there's a girl at his school who's quite promising. In my past life, it was the same. I had spent half my life sacrificing for the Carter family, yet everyone still said I was lucky to have married well. I took a sip of my drink, the bitterness of the wine lingering in my throat. Even if I stayed single for the rest of my life, I would never marry Daniel Carter again. I swallowed another sip, feeling a sense of clarity. This time I would live for myself. The warm and lively atmosphere was suddenly disrupted when the door was flung open. A girl without parents has no manners at all. Before I could even react, Daniel's mother barged in, her presence as domineering as ever. Just like in my past life, she strode in with an air of ownership, greeting the guests as if she were the host. Today is a joyous day for our Carter family. Everyone eat and drink to your heart's content. If the food runs out, just let me know, we'll bring more. She scanned the room with her usual arrogance, her voice loud and commanding. Our family comes from a long line of scholars. We are people of tradition and respect. It is my fault for failing to find a proper daughter-in-law with good manners. Please forgive me for the embarrassment. The so-called scholarly family she boasted about. Her late husband had been nothing more than an accountant for the town's grain storage. He had died drunk in a warehouse, yet she twisted the story, claiming he had sacrificed himself for the community. Now she turned to me, her voice dripping with false kindness. Emma, I gave you money to host this meal, yet you started feasting without me. You didn't even have the decency to invite me first. Her voice dropped into a condescending whisper. I used to think you were a sensible girl, but now you're acting out of line. I'll let it slide this time since it's your first offense. After the meal, you come with me, apologize to Daniel, and kneel to serve him tea. If you do, I'll still consider you part of the Carter family. Otherwise, you better be careful. I'll make sure no man ever dares to marry you. I didn't move. With a sharp slap, her palm landed hard against my back. When your elders speak, are you deaf? Get up. Her voice rang through the room. Where have you ever seen a daughter-in-law sitting down to eat while her guests are still hungry? She snatched the cup of wine from my hands. My son is going to be a high-ranking official in the future. Drinking will only damage his brain. He can't have this. I'll drink on behalf of the Carter family. She raised the cup with a forced smile. Forgive us for the lack of proper hospitality, everyone. The villagers exchanged glances, stunned by the scene. So the Carter family provided the money, and Emma did all the work. This kid should have spoken up earlier. The way she caused a commotion, I thought she really wasn't marrying Daniel. Turns out she was just trying to play hard to get. Emma, this isn't right. You should give your mother-in-law a seat. In my past life, the Carter family had never thrown me a wedding banquet, but Daniel's mother had still gone around collecting wedding gifts and money from the villagers. The very next day, Daniel had left for school while I was left behind to manage the household, working myself to the bone with my own dowry. I had bought food and held a feast to thank the guests, but when the meal started, Daniel's mother took all the credit. The men left with cigarettes, the women and children stuffed their pockets with candy and seeds, and the whole town praised Daniel for being such a good man. Meanwhile, I had merely been a backdrop for their success. Instead of gratitude, Daniel's mother scolded me for wasting money and even forbade me from eating at my own wedding feast. She had made me kneel at the entrance, bowing to every guest who came and went. A man never bows to others, she had told me. A wife must kneel on his behalf. Showing respect to your husband is the duty of a good wife. This is the Carter family's tradition. The next day my knees were so swollen they looked like two large red buns, yet I still had to get up, do housework and work in the fields. All of my dowry had already been taken by Daniel's mother under the excuse of keeping it safe. Even when I was pregnant and craved a single egg, she accused me of being greedy. Old grievances and new wounds piled up, but nothing fueled my hatred more than the fact that in my past life, he was the one who killed my child. Daniel's mother had always been ruthless and short-tempered, but in my 5th year of marriage, she suffered a stroke and became bedridden for more than 30 years. Later, when Daniel climbed the ranks and gained status, he considered divorcing me multiple times, thinking I was of no use to him. It was his mother who kept me in the household. I was the one who let Emma into this family, she said. You're always busy with work, but all these years, she's been the one taking care of me. As long as I'm alive, you won't send her away. At the time, I foolishly thought she was harsh on the outside but soft on the inside. For more than 30 years, I fed her, cleaned up after her, and took care of her until the very end. But when she was on her deathbed, she sent me away, grabbed Daniel and Sarah's hands, and gasped out her last words. I'm sorry you both wanted Daniel to marry someone else, but I had no choice. Without Emma's dowry, how would you have gone to college together? Later, when I became a burden, I couldn't bear to see you struggle, so I let Emma take my place for 40 years. She then clutched Daniel's son, my son, the boy I had raised with my own hands. Call Sarah Mom from now on. At that moment, I finally realized that the child I had given birth to, the one Daniel's mother had stolen from me, should have been a girl. My daughter had only been in this world for a single day before that cruel old woman threw her into the wilderness to be eaten by wolves. I had rushed in demanding answers, but Daniel's mother had taken her last breath. When I tried to report it to the police, Daniel slapped me across the face. Emma, my mother is dead because of you, and now you're trying to shift the blame. My body was already weak, and the rage consumed me. I collapsed onto the ground and never got up again. Seeing that wretched woman before me again, my hatred burned brighter than ever. Daniel's mother was still trying to act like she was in charge, but this time I wasn't going to let her. I snatched the wine cup from her hands and smashed it to the ground. Out of food, are you? I sneered. Is that why you came here spouting nonsense? Let me remind you, I'm no longer part of the Carter family. Her expression twisted, but before she could speak, I continued loud enough for everyone to hear. Everyone knows how generous you are, Mrs. Carter. You gave all your ration tickets to your precious son. But tell me, where did you suddenly get the money to throw this banquet? The villagers exchanged glances, realization dawning on their faces. Everyone in town had heard Daniel's mother boasting about how difficult it was to raise a child alone as a widow. I'm just an old woman. Whether I eat or not doesn't matter, she had always said. But I can't let my son, the future pillar of this country, go hungry. I exposed her lies with a smirk. If you were really starving and just wanted a bite of meat, you could have asked me. No one would have laughed at you. For the first time in my life, I openly confronted her. Daniel's mother froze, her usual sharp tongue failing her. Then, realizing she was losing face, she quickly adjusted, letting out a wail. Oh, what terrible luck I have. The new daughter-in-law is already cursing her mother-in-law. Villagers, you must help me. My son nearly died saving this ungrateful girl, and now she's treating me like this. I might as well die. With that, she threw herself at me, knocking into my stomach so hard that I felt like my insides had been turned upside down. In my past life, when she was bedridden, she used to throw cold or scalding water at me whenever she was unhappy. But this time I wasn't going to tolerate it. I lifted my knee and rammed it straight into her nose. She howled, clutching her face as blood spurted out. Just then, Daniel walked in and saw the scene unfold with a furious expression. He stormed over and slapped me to the ground. "You ungrateful wretch. How dare you hit your mother-in-law? Do you have no shame?" I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth and spat in his face. "Daniel Carter, dream on. Even if I never marry, I will never marry you. If you dare spread rumors to ruin my reputation, I swear I'll have you charged with harassment." Daniel's mother wiped the blood from her nose, her eyes dark with malice. "All right, Emma, you brought this on yourself. You refuse to respect me? Fine. Today, I'll make sure the whole town knows what kind of woman you really are." She turned to the villagers, raising her voice dramatically. "You all think Emma is some innocent girl? Let me tell you the truth. I've kept quiet out of respect for her, but she isn't the pure woman you all believe she is. That night when my son found her, she had just been fooling around with a man in the fields. She was so weak after being used by a man that her legs gave out and she slipped into the river. Emma Johnson is nothing but a filthy." The vile words spread like a thunderclap, and in an instant murmurs and whispers engulfed me. No matter the era, a woman's chastity was always the easiest weapon to use against her. Lies took only a single sentence to spread, yet I had no way to prove my innocence, not in my past life nor in this one. The Carters were hellbent on destroying me. I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth and locked eyes with Daniel. "Daniel Carter," I said, my voice steady, "if you have even a shred of conscience left, then tell everyone the truth about how I ended up in the river that day. Do you dare?" The women in the crowd spoke up as well, their voices pressing him. "Daniel, is what your mother said true? This is a matter of life and death for a woman. You can't just say things in the heat of the moment and ruin Emma's entire future." Under my unwavering stare, Daniel hesitated, guilt flickering across his face for a brief moment. But then he clenched his jaw and spat out, "Emma, this is exactly what you deserve. But if you're truly remorseful, I'm willing to be the bigger person and take you back to the villagers." He looked conflicted, torn between pity and duty. His self-sacrificing act only made them admire him more. His mother sneered, "Everyone, after you finish eating, help us move the dowry and please keep an eye on this shameless woman for me. Who knows what kind of trouble she'll stir up the moment my son leaves home." Daniel reached for my wrist, his grip tightening. "Emma, I'm giving you another chance to turn over a new leaf." But just then, the quiet night was interrupted by the sound of tires crunching against gravel. A pair of headlights illuminated the courtyard. I chuckled. "Too bad, Daniel, you're out of time." A military green truck rolled to a stop in front of my house, and several female soldiers jumped out from the passenger seat. A familiar figure emerged. It was Tommy, a 13-year-old boy from my village. "Emma, I got here in time, right?" He grinned. I stuffed a handful of candy into his hands and gave him a thumbs up. "Perfect timing." The soldiers quickly recognized me. "Comrade, we're so relieved to see you safe." The villagers exchanged confused glances, but Daniel's face drained of color. His lips moved as he mumbled to himself, This isn't possible. How do they know?" Panic seized him as he rushed to pull me aside. "Emma, I take it back. Let's get married right now. I'll take you home immediately." Before he could say another word, one of the female soldiers shoved him away. "Sir, what do you think you're doing? You can't just grab a woman like that." Then, as she got a clearer look at him, recognition dawned on her face. "Wait a second. You were there that night, weren't you? We handed the rescued girl over to you." Confusion spread through the crowd. I took a deep breath and finally revealed the truth. The person who saved me was never Daniel Carter. It was a group of passing female soldiers. A murmur of shock rippled through the villagers. Daniel had been lying all along. The truth was something I had only learned after my death in my past life. But this time I had written a letter in advance, sending Tommy to deliver it to the nearby military camp. In the letter, I explained my situation and requested their help in clarifying what really happened that night. Immediately, the military base was just outside of town, so they arrived just in time. "That day, we were on a mission when we found Emma drowning," one of the soldiers explained. But since we couldn't delay our orders, we had to leave her in someone's care. This man," she pointed at, Daniel, claimed he was from the same village and promised to take responsibility. So we entrusted her to him. Gasps filled the air. So it was the soldiers who saved Emma, not Daniel. Then why did you lie? Daniel stammered, struggling to find an excuse. His mother quickly stepped in, shielding him with her body. So what if those girls fished her out? Without my son giving her mouth to mouth, she would have drowned anyway. You all saw it with your own eyes. A soldier frowned. That's not right. We had already performed chest compressions and expelled the water from her lungs. There was absolutely no need for mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Daniel's mother glared at them. What do you little girls know? My son is a college student. The soldier didn't back down. We may not be college students, but we are medics. We've saved lives on the battlefield. Do you think we don't know how to assess a drowning victim? The weight of their words sank into the crowd. I turned back to Daniel, who refused to meet my gaze. Daniel Carter, I said coldly. These women saved my life, but you? My voice sharpened. You took credit for their actions and used it as an excuse to take advantage of me in front of all these people. You tried to ruin my reputation. You took false gratitude and twisted it into a reason to force me into marriage. What exactly are you plotting? Daniel's mother hurriedly shielded him behind her, her neck stiff with defiance. But before she could speak, one of the female soldiers cut her off. I knew I wasn't mistaken. It was him. She grabbed Daniel's mother by the wrist. That night when I was in the truck, I saw it clearly. Emma Johnson was pushed into the river by someone, and that someone was you. You were wearing this exact outfit. The moment those words left her mouth, panic flashed across the old woman's face. She instinctively covered her face and tried to shrink into the crowd. Nonsense. You're lying. You're framing me, she shrieked. I demand to see your superior. She thought the soldiers would back down, but to her horror, they immediately agreed. All right, let's go. We'll go to the police station and clear this up. At that moment, a few of the villagers hesitated before stepping forward. Now that you mention it, I do remember seeing Mrs. Carter near the river that day, one of them admitted. And she really was wearing this outfit. Yeah, I remember too, another chimed in. When Daniel shouted for help, she was right there. If the soldiers hadn't seen it themselves, how could they be so sure? The truth finally unraveled. From the very start, my fall into the river had been a setup orchestrated by the Carter family. They wanted me to owe them my life, to be forced into their debt forever. A sharp slap landed across Daniel's face. You shameless bastard, I said. The women in the village, furious at the deception, swarmed forward. Daniel's mother clutched her son and bolted, but not before spitting out a final threat. You ungrateful wretch. Marrying into our family would have been a blessing beyond your wildest dreams. Just wait. When my son rises to greatness, you'll be groveling at his feet in regret. I sneered. Without my dowry funding his education, I'd love to see how Daniel Carter plans to rise to greatness. The next morning, I packed my bags and headed to the village entrance. In my past life, I had wasted decades in the Carter household, enduring insults and humiliation. But before my marriage, I had survived on my own. I had worked whatever jobs I could find to support myself. This time, instead of throwing my dowry away on Daniel, I would use it to open a small business. Yesterday, when I told the female soldiers about my plans, they praised me for my courage and promised to request permission from their superiors. Since they had to head into town today for an official ceremony, they would pick me up on the way. As I waited for their truck, fate decided to mock me once more. I ran into Daniel, his mother, and Sarah Miller, who was sitting comfortably on the back of his bicycle. The three of them looked at me, each with their own hidden agenda. Daniel's mother, having somehow managed to scrape together tuition money, made a grand show of taking it out of her bag and then stuffing it back in, making sure I saw every movement. Some people, she said loudly, think they are indispensable. But look at my son. Wherever he goes, good fortune follows. Unlike some illiterate nobody who thinks they can climb higher than their station. Sarah leaned forward from her seat, deliberately wrapping her arms around Daniel's waist as she smirked at me. So you're Emma Johnson, she asked, her voice filled with condescension. Emma, like the kind that grows in the dirt? Your parents must not have been educated. Otherwise, why would they give you such a name? In my past life, the day after I married Daniel, Sarah had come looking for him, insisting that they go to school together. When she saw me, she looked at me the way a wealthy person would look at a lowly servant. "You're that desperate, pathetic girl who wouldn't let go of Daniel, aren't you?" she had sneered. Back then, my face burned with embarrassment. I had been wearing an old blue headscarf that Daniel's mother gave me, my clothes still stained from cooking that morning. Meanwhile, Sarah stood there in the latest fashion, her sleek black braid shining in the sunlight. That winter, Daniel had complained that the classrooms were freezing. I had walked 40 miles to buy him hand cream to keep his hands from cracking, but when he finally got it, he had given it to Sarah instead. Just like in the past, Sarah now spoke down to me. "Daniel bought me a fancy lotion," she said, pretending to be surprised. "He didn't get one for you." Before I could respond, Daniel cut me off, his voice dripping. "What could you possibly talk about with her? She's just a housewife. She wouldn't understand a thing. Come on, get on," Sarah said sweetly, hopping onto the back of his bike. I watched as Daniel shoved the breakfast I had carefully prepared into her hands. "Your favorite, pan-fried eggs with sugar," he said. Their shamelessness was so blatant that if I dared to be angry, I would be painted as petty and jealous for the next 40 years. They had used their so-called friendship as an excuse to trample on my dignity over and over again. Just as I was about to respond, a group of women from the village suddenly surrounded me, their chatter filling the air. They were all carrying bags, their faces brimming with determination. They were the ones I had convinced yesterday to leave the village with me and start a new life in the city, and they had all heard Sarah's insult. "You may have an education," one of them snapped, "but it's clear that education was wasted on you. Did your parents never teach you how to speak like a decent person? Oh wow, look at how tightly she's clinging to him. Don't worry, we don't fight with dogs over scraps." Sarah's face turned red with fury. "You're all just rude and jealous. Jealous that Daniel and I have a bright future ahead of us, unlike you, who are destined to spend your lives digging in the dirt." I cut her off mid-sentence. "The chairman teaches us that in a revolution, every role is equal. The working class is the most honorable of all. Are you saying you disagree with the chairman's words?" Sarah trembled with frustration, unable to respond. "You're just bitter because Daniel dumped you," she snapped. "You're young, but your mind is filled with nothing but romance. With people like you, how can the country ever hope to prosper?" Her attempt to shame me backfired instantly. The women around us erupted into heated voices. "And yet here you are, flinging dirt on others while pretending to be so righteous. My cousin works at the department store, and she saw you and Daniel holding hands while shopping. Wong from the county school saw you two whispering to each other during an outdoor movie. Back then, Daniel went around telling everyone that Emma was already his wife, so what does that make you, Sarah? A shameless homewrecker." Sarah turned to Daniel, panicked. "Daniel, say something." But Daniel wasn't looking at her. Instead, he was staring at me, gripping his bike tightly before suddenly yanking me aside. "Emma, you've lived this life once before, haven't you?" His eyes were filled with urgency, desperate for confirmation. Unless I had been reborn, how could I, the once easily manipulated Emma Johnson, suddenly become a completely different person? I met his anxious gaze and smirked. "Daniel Carter, have you lost your mind? What nonsense are you spouting?" I sneered. "We have nothing to do with each other anymore. Keep your hands off me." I wrenched my arm free from his grasp. In my past life, my suffering had been his greatest triumph, but I refused to let him enjoy the same satisfaction in this one. I wanted him to know that the 19-year-old Emma Johnson despised him from the bottom of her heart. Daniel's face darkened as he processed my words. Then with a cold snort he scoffed, "Fine, Emma Johnson. You're just bitter that you'll never get to be a government official's wife. From now on I'll walk my path and you walk yours. We owe each other nothing. Remember this. I will only keep rising higher and higher." He was convinced that armed with his past life experiences, he was destined for even greater success in this life. But why should we be even? He still owed me a lifetime of suffering. Daniel climbed onto his bike with Sarah behind him and started to ride away. I stepped forward and blocked his path. "Emma, even if you regret it now, it's too late." I cut off his shameless rambling. "Give me back my bike." Daniel stiffened. That bicycle, I had bought it for him in our past life. And not just the bike, I was going to take back everything that belonged to me. Give what back? Daniel's mother shoved me aside. That bike was your gift to my son. You practically begged to give it to him and now you want to take it back? Have you no shame? I didn't bother arguing. With one sharp tug, I yanked the bike toward me. Sarah, still perched on the back seat, was flung off, landing ungracefully on the ground. You all had no shame taking my things, but I'm shameless for reclaiming what's mine. I turned to the group of women behind me. Let's go to the Carter house and take back what belongs to us. We'll use it to fund our business. Without waiting for a response, I shoved Daniel aside, climbed onto my bike and pedaled straight toward their home. The other women followed, some grabbing sewing machines, others snatching up towels and soap, and a few even raiding the kitchen for rice flour and oil. Daniel's mother shrieked in panic, scrambling to stop them, but in the chaos, one of the women clawed at her face, leaving red scratches. Oh, so you're the one who told my mother-in-law to pick fights with me, huh? The woman taunted. You've got a big mouth, old hag. Sarah had already gone pale, trembling as she cowered behind Daniel. At first, Daniel tried to maintain his dignity, scoffing. A real man doesn't fight with women. But the moment the women started calling him a heartless liar and a scumbag, he lost his composure. Fists flew and Daniel was beaten to the ground. He barely managed to crawl away, bolting toward the village chief's house. These crazy women are destroying my family's future. Meanwhile, his mother sat on the ground, clutching her face and howling like a dying animal. That wretched girl ruined my son's engagement, she sobbed. She's out for revenge. She wants to kill me. Go ahead, let me die. But remember, my son is going to be a college student. He's going to be a high-ranking official in the future. Village chief, you have to stand up for us. Daniel clenched his jaw and glared at me. Emma Johnson, you lawless fool. Do you even understand that stealing is a crime? Could go to jail for this, and so could all of you. Daniel straightened his back, his voice dripping with arrogance. Emma, we have nothing left between us. Today you either kneel and admit your wrongdoing, or you can wait for the police to come and take you to prison. But instead of the fear he was expecting, I only gave him a cold smile. Debts must be repaid. What I'm taking back is rightfully mine. Daniel's mother let out a sharp cry, stomping her foot in frustration. Rubbish. Just because you say it's yours doesn't mean it is. Where's your proof? Sarah, regaining her confidence, chimed in with her high-pitched voice. The law is the law. We'll go to the authorities right now. Emma, don't think you can just throw a tantrum and get away with it. Even the village chief frowned as he looked at me. Emma, do you have any proof that these things belong to you? If not, causing a public disturbance like this is indeed against the law. I let out a cold chuckle. Of course I do. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a thick stack of IOUs. Daniel's face turned deathly pale. I knew it, he hissed. You never threw them away. Then he sneered. So that's what this was all about. You got close to me because you knew I had a bright future ahead. Now your true colors are finally showing. In his past life, Daniel always liked to show off. Every time he subtly demanded something from me, he'd put on a grand act, tossing me a written IOU as if it were a joke. Not just anyone is worthy of holding an IOU from the Carter family, he would say smugly. One day when I make it big, these will be worth double. They'll be able to buy your whole life back then. I never thought much of it. To protect his pride, I'd pretend to toss the IOUs away, only to pick them up later in secret. It wasn't because I was after his future wealth. I was just foolish enough to think that buying my whole life was the most romantic thing he had ever said to me. I had kept those IOUs in my dresser for years, treating them like love letters. But now, seeing them with my own eyes, Daniel could do nothing but grit his teeth in fury. His mother tried to argue, but I cut her off. Even an educated man tries to go back on his debts, huh? She fell silent, her mouth opening and closing without a word. Meanwhile, the sound of the women helping me move my things had drawn a massive crowd. People stood in a circle watching as my belongings were taken from the Carter household. Wait, so all these things actually belong to Emma? Someone gasped. Sarah, looking increasingly anxious, clung to Daniel's arm. Daniel, she asked in a trembling voice, What's going on? Didn't you say your family was wealthy? In my past life, Sarah hadn't realized the truth until Daniel's mother passed away. By then, Daniel had already achieved success, and financial concerns were no longer an issue for them. But now, staring at the near-empty Carter household, Sarah was clearly struggling to accept reality. No matter how much Daniel tried to promise her that he would still get into college and become an official, she wouldn't believe him. As the two of them argued, a group of men suddenly spoke up. Sarah, didn't you say the Carter family was one of the richest in the village? If they're this broke, how are they going to afford a dowry for your brother's wedding? Sarah's face turned as white as a sheet. She spun around only to see her father standing there, livid. Dad, what are you doing here? She stammered. Earlier, when we were taking back my belongings, I had sent one of my friends to inform Sarah's family in the neighboring village. Without warning, Sarah's father raised his hand and slapped her across the face. You disgraceful brat, he roared. You spend all your time dolling yourself up, talking about how many successful men are at your school, and this is what you end up with? A broke fool. Sarah was yanked forward by her hair as her father dragged her away. Meanwhile, Daniel was shoved to the ground by the other villagers. Not a single penny to your name, and you still think you can get married? Didn't he claim to be educated? What a joke. Daniel's face turned an ugly shade of red as he stared at his now empty home. He turned his bloodshot eyes toward me, filled with hatred. Emma Johnson, you blind stupid woman. One day, I'll make you kneel before me and beg. I met his glare with icy indifference. Then I pointed at the crisp new military green pants he was wearing. Take them off. Daniel froze. The fabric for those pants I bought. I sewed them myself. Even if I burned them to ashes, I'd rather do that than let an animal like you wear them. His face flushed a deep red. Whether from rage or shame I couldn't tell. You shameless wretch, he bellowed. Telling a man to strip in broad daylight? Do you have no decency? All you think about is men. Women like you should be executed for being perverts. As he spoke, he must have conveniently forgotten his behavior in our past life. Romance between men and women was a natural part of life, but in my past life, every time I had wanted to get close to Daniel Carter, he would scold me, pointing his finger in my face. Do you have any idea how hard it is for the country to produce a college student? He would say. Do you know how valuable my future is? My experiences are meant to contribute to the nation's development, not to be wasted on the rotten flesh of a housewife like you. He spoke with such righteous indignation as if I were nothing but a filthy rat scurrying under the daylight. And yet, in front of my lifeless body, the 60-year-old Daniel had shamelessly entangled himself with Sarah Miller, their bodies slick with sweat. One moment he was calling her his sweetheart while biting her chest. The next she was moaning, "Big brother," as she threw her head back. Their positions shifted repeatedly, their movements disgusting to witness. Now, looking at the man standing so brazenly in front of me, I forced down my nausea and let out a cold laugh. Shut your mouth, Daniel, I said. Unless you own the police, keep your threats to yourself. He had the audacity to call me shameless, yet back when he begged me to make him a pair of military green pants just like his classmates had, he hadn't found it improper at all. But now that I was asking for what was rightfully mine, I was suddenly the indecent one. My voice was loud, ensuring that every villager heard me clearly. Daniel Carter, you look down on me, yet you have no problem taking advantage of me. You insult me while stretching out your hands for my money and my work. If anyone here lacks shame, it's you. After all our previous confrontations, Daniel's reputation in the village had already hit rock bottom. Now the crowd erupted into laughter. So you were the one begging her for things this whole time, and here you were acting all high and mighty. Some educated man you are, Daniel. Since when do scholars beg women for pants? Amid the roaring laughter, Daniel's face turned the color of a pig's liver. Under the pressure, he angrily tore off his pants and shoes, revealing mismatched red and green underpants beneath. Furious, he threw the pants and shoes at me. Who cares about your cheap rags? Listen to me, Emma Johnson. You were never anything but my last choice. You could never measure up to me. I am a mountain you'll never be able to climb. I didn't bother responding to his desperate yelling. I simply let out a small chuckle and walked away. I opened a small shop near the county school, selling goods transported from different regions. On the day of my grand opening, Daniel's mother stormed in, screaming that I was a parasite to society. She was quickly stopped by a police officer. "Ma'am, the government now encourages private businesses under the new economic reforms. If you keep causing trouble, we'll have no choice but to detain you." Daniel's mother left in a huff, muttering curses under her breath. "Shameless girl flaunting yourself on the streets. Let's see which man will ever want you now. Don't come crying back when you realize no one will have you." She was still dreaming of her son's bright future. But just as she was indulging in her fantasy of Daniel graduating college, a police car roared into the schoolyard. Sarah's father stepped out of the vehicle, his voice booming. "Daniel Carter, you got my daughter pregnant, and today I'm going to drag you to hell for it." In my past life, Sarah had gotten pregnant around this time. Back then, Daniel had frequently come home to sleep with me, using my money to buy Sarah's family's silence. That was the only reason they hadn't exposed the scandal. But this time, without my money to keep them quiet, the Miller family was out for blood. I smirked at Daniel's mother. "Looks like your daughter's going to college and prison this time." As my friends and I sat nearby, cracking sunflower seeds, we watched Daniel get handcuffed and shoved into the police car. His mother chased after them, screaming and sobbing. "It was that wretched girl who seduced my son. My baby is supposed to be a college student." Sarah's father turned and delivered 2 heavy kicks to Daniel's mother, sending her sprawling onto the ground. "Shut up, you old hag," he barked. Daniel's mother clutched her head in pain, her face twisted in agony. She turned her gaze toward me, her voice suddenly frail. "Emma, my head feels dizzy. Be a good girl and help your auntie up." It seemed that the stroke she had suffered in my past life had arrived much earlier this time. But as she lay there pleading for help, I felt nothing. I spat out the sunflower seed shell in my mouth. "You owe me my daughter's life. Every debt will be repaid." To my surprise, Daniel was eventually released. Not only that, but he even managed to marry Sarah. But because of her health issues, Sarah was unable to have a baby. The Miller family, unwilling to support 2 extra mouths, demanded a bride price of $50. Otherwise, they swore they would rather kill Sarah than let Daniel walk free. Daniel's mother lay paralyzed in bed, covered in urine and filth, while Daniel ran around in desperation trying to borrow money. But wherever he went, he was met with the cold faces of debt collectors who had gathered at his door. It turned out that in order to save face and gather Daniel Carter's college tuition, his mother had mortgaged their house. "When we lent you money, it was because we believed you had a future in college. But now the whole school knows you got a girl pregnant. They've expelled you. You think we'll just sit here and let this debt go unpaid?" The Carter family's creditors, along with the Jong family, hounded him like wolves closing in on prey. Daniel, overwhelmed and desperate, was covered in stress sores, his mouth dry from anxiety. In the end, he actually came to me to borrow money. My business was thriving. I had no time to entertain him, so he just squatted outside my shop, waiting for me to close for the day. As I counted stacks of bills, he couldn't hide the bitterness in his eyes. He wondered why I hadn't been this successful in our past life. But I had always been capable. The only difference was that this time I wasn't burdened by a useless, selfish man dragging me down. "Emma, for the sake of our past, help me out just this once," he pleaded. "Look, you have so much money. You only need to lend me half." I fanned myself with a stack of bills in my hands. "I do have money," I said, smirking. "But why should I give any to you?" Daniel's breath was foul from stress. His once handsome features now dull and lifeless, like a desperate gambler at the end of his rope. Then he straightened up as if struck by sudden inspiration. "Emma, how about this?" he said, his voice oily with persuasion. "If you agree to lend me the money, I'll marry you. You don't know, but I do. I just need to get past this crisis and I will make it into college. I will have a bright future, I swear on my life." And then, in a move so pathetic it was almost laughable, he actually dropped to his knees and raised 3 fingers to the sky. The sky, which had been clear, suddenly roared with thunder. Daniel flinched so hard he nearly wet himself. I let out a cold laugh. "See that? Even the heavens can't stand your lies anymore." I smacked his face lightly with the stack of bills in my hand. "Daniel Carter, wake up. There's no college for you, no bright future. All you have ahead of you is a pregnant woman and a paralyzed mother. This is your fate." I spared him no further words and walked away, leaving him sobbing behind me. Daniel still ended up marrying Sarah, with their house seized by creditors. He was forced to sell the land his ancestors had passed down for generations. The three of them, Daniel, Sarah, and his mother, ended up homeless, taking shelter in a rundown shack on the outskirts of town. At first, Daniel still clung to his pride. But when his mother was on the verge of starvation, Sarah, screaming in frustration, shoved him out the door to beg. The first place he came to was my shop. By then my business had expanded. I had opened a second store. With a forced smile, Daniel dusted off his ragged clothes and stood at my doorstep. "Boss Johnson, I heard you opened a new branch," he said, trying to sound casual. "You know I've got a good head for numbers. I could handle your accounts. Pay me whatever you think is fair. Oh, and that empty house in the village? My mother and my wife can take care of it for you. You haven't been to school. You might struggle with bookkeeping. Why not leave it to someone who understands it?" I didn't even look at him. My friends and I were dressed sharply, heading to night school for further education. Where did this beggar come from? "Get lost," one of them said, wrinkling her nose. I didn't spare him a glance as I walked away. That was the last time I ever saw Daniel Carter alive. The next news I heard was that he had gone insane. One night during an argument, he grabbed a knife and stabbed Sarah to death. He didn't stop there. He cut the unborn child from her womb and hacked it to pieces. Then he slit his mother's throat. Just before he killed himself, he kept muttering something. A villager told me, shaking their head, that if he could do it all over again, he would marry you, Emma. I chuckled and shook my head at my new store's grand opening. Surrounded by laughter and cheer, I raised my glass. "Eat, drink, and be merry," I said. "Don't mention such bad luck." The sound of clinking glasses filled the air. I didn't know if Daniel had gotten his wish to start over again, but I did know one thing. This time I was going to live a happy life every single day.